Good morning. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Daily Medicine Transmission for April 13th, 2022. It is Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday. We made it to Wednesday. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Shout out to the Starseed Fellowship. Just thank you for everything, your contributions, your commitment to your path and to the space that's being created and the conversation. I just really enjoy the space so much. So if you're interested in what a Starseed Fellowship and the Starseed Ministry really means and my conception of it in terms of creating a space to encompass that, there's a video actually linked in the description box that's called Intro to Starseed Ministry, and you can check that out and see if that speaks to you or not. So, welcome to the daily. We we have some things to talk about today. Wow. Let me get out of studio mode here, and first we have this beautiful photography of Devil's Tower. So this is in Wyoming. Most people, at least if you're a citizen of the United States and probably all over the world, there are people that know Devil's Tower. So there are a number of indigenous narratives, sacred narratives, and stories and historical accounts of Devil's Tower and how it came to be the way that it is and its significance. And you can search the interwebs for all of those things. There's a number of them. But one thing seems pretty consistent here with their stories is that there was some 7 sisters that were able to escape or find some sort of safety as a result of going into the top of Devil's Tower and going back into space, right? The Pleiades, the 7 sisters. So that's something that is always worth investigating, especially now in this Pleiadian time with the North Node and the South Node of the Moon, and especially the North Node in conjunction with the Pleiades. So this was just astronomy picture of the day. You can link to that in the description box below, and this is what it is. And so I haven't been up close to Devil's Tower, definitely been in the vicinity, traveling, and so have seen it from afar. And we remember, if you've ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you also know that this was kind of like the pinnacle here. This was the centerpiece of that entire story and the location of contact and everything. So many themes related to starseeds in particular, or our galactic community, whatever that means to you, is wrapped up in this. So it's nice to have these references and just something really beautiful to look at while we're doing these transmissions. So, and also to bring in the Starseed and specifically the Pleiadian narrative for today too. This is a test of a polarized consciousness. There is no doubt. So a lot has happened since yesterday and today. So just a really brief check-in with the space weather right now, and damn, I always think I have it so perfectly queued up and then I forget a piece before I hit the record button. But just the Schumann real quick. Now, I did wake up at about 3:30 or 4 a.m. I'm on like day 2 or 3 of pure sleep. My partner has been taking it consistently. We are absolutely sleeping. And even though waking up at about 3:30 a.m., which, roughly is, I would say, 7:30 a.m. Eastern or Universal Time, and you can see here right before that there was a little bit of consistent amplification. It wasn't much, but it definitely was noticeable. This was happening overnight, so the KP index we're going to see definitely was still a little bit unstable, and I know there are massive storms happening in like the southeast of the United States. So let us know how you're doing if you catch this video, because I know it's been a consistent storm front basically that has been impacting that area, and there's quite a few of our viewership that is living in that area. So let us know how you're doing. Also, you know, just to be aware of these types of strong systems that are operating in different parts of the world and what's going on in terms of the solar impact as well, because there is a connection, obviously, to the social bandwidth, the consciousness of humans and their interaction with the natural world, which is all what we're seeing here with storms, with solar weather. It's all our relationship as well with those things and how it impacts our consciousness and how we live in this kind of symbiotic relationship. So if you found yourself waking up in the middle of the night, I wouldn't be surprised. The great thing about this product of Pure Sleep, and I'm not getting paid or anything, this is just the first thing that's really worked for my insomniac partner, is that my nervous system and my magnetic field is still fully functioning. It just has all of the right elements that allow the parasympathetic nervous system and your other aspects of your nervous system to find like a baseline. So it's not like you're getting knocked out or forced into sleep. It's, I did wake up, and it was, my cat came bounding into the room at the same time and arguably could have woken me up. But he is absolutely some sort of barometer for this weather. He really follows the flow of this type of energetic and electromagnetic changes and shiftings really consistently at this point. So he comes jumping in. I'm like waking up and I'm like, oh, something's going on. Looks like there was some movement or agitation in some way. There are storms that are happening. Certainly earthquakes are happening across the planet. But the Pure Sleep, it didn't, everything is still functioning, but my body was so much more relaxed, right? I was able to go back to sleep. I didn't have all of the weird hot flashes and agitation and physiological aspects. I woke up and I felt it, but then I went right back to sleep, and you could just feel it in the body. Anyway, I'm just letting you know that there are things, and magnesium is one of the biggest components of that. So just having enough magnesium, it's a natural muscle relaxer. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, right? It's a natural relaxer of the muscle tissue, all of the muscle tissue, smooth muscle, which has a lot to do much more with your organs and stuff in the viscera. So anyway, I said it was going to be a short check-in about space weather, and it's impossible. So just real quick, right? You can see that the KP index was disturbed, and then it bounced out a little and then came back up. And you see that right here in the solar wind speed, the solar wind temperature, even it's called the phi angle of the field. So when it goes back and forth like this, it's usually an indication that it's being jostled and needs to readjust itself. So you can see that there was something, and there is solar weather coming. There's a CME still on its way, a coronal hole stream, and we could, have a big flare at any moment, but a lot of the sunspots are moving on the far side of the sun, so it may be quiet. So when that happens, we know that cosmic rays are much more of an impact, and that leads people into a number of different situations that could be an emergency, psychiatric and cardiac especially, or cardiovascular. So just wanted to share, make sure we are updated in what's going on so that we have as much data for ourselves to come to our own sense of knowing and understanding of the world around us and how it impacts us and how we impact it. So I want to get right into the astrology and get into some of these events that have happened since yesterday and today, and really kind of break it down in terms of these astrological symbols and timing. And things that have transitioned. So we talked about Neptune and Jupiter were in exact conjunction yesterday. They were at the very last minute, 23 degrees and 59 minutes, they came into this conjunction. And then they've both since moved on from here. So Jupiter's already moved into the next degree. And by, midday, Neptune will have followed suit and moved into this next degree. So if we're thinking about the astrology like a mandala, just like Dane Rudyard's book, The Astrological Mandala, which is pretty much my main resource, and it's out of print, which is a shame because it is an incredible resource. He's probably my biggest astrological influence at this point. But when these large planets move into new, as I've talked about, into new degrees, the shift in the pattern of meaning, the archetype, the symbol that it represents also seems a bit more, well, especially Jupiter involved, grandiose, and in this case, expansive. So we talked yesterday about the last time Jupiter and Neptune were in a conjunction with each other, what was going on then, how the Virginia General Assembly on that date, which was March 17th, 1856, had passed legislation to make it much more difficult for slaves and people who were slaves, basically, to escape by way of boat, right, over the oceans. And Pisces, archetypally, is related to the ocean, the oceans of consciousness, the realm of the astral realm. And what's interesting, as I also linked that video that Jordan Maxwell talked about maritime law, just a short video to kind of explain why it's important as we are unearthing or bearing witness to the unearthing of all of the underlying occult and secret society organization of our current society has been going on. That's thanks to Pluto, of course. And so understanding maritime law, how it's different from the law of the land, how there is a, such a strong need to control that in order to control others, and how Neptune and Pisces coming back, or Neptune and Pisces and Jupiter and Pisces meeting again in this next spiral is the same basic function, right? These two coming together in Pisces. They're both rulers of this sign, right? So this is very grandiose. This, right? Very grandiose. What happened yesterday that was grandiose? Well, there was two things. One was the Watch the Water interview with Stu Peters that has made its way all through the alternative community, I guess, the alternative news community. I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched it. I've just been interacting with a lot of other people's input about it. And what really caught my interest more was the actual research that it's, this whole snake venom thing is based on, which is something I want to bring up as well. But we see that that happened, and then we had the situation in New York, which seemed like it could have been a lot worse. And I haven't done a ton of dig on it, just knowing that I do believe that there was something about unexploded bombs. And boy, Chiron is also moving into a new degree today. And the same with all these other large planets, large orbits, right? When Chiron changes into the next degree, it's a whole new realm. And the degree it just left is the one it was at the new moon. And I'm going to read you the Sabian symbol at some point, and be able to share with you what that has represented, because you will just see it acted out in real life in a lot of these situations. So, okay, let's start with Watch the Water first. We had this massive conjunction. Now, the fog of war just got expanded exponentially. It just got, it just spread out with the influence of Jupiter to an infinite volume, okay? It just spread far and wide, and this is what Jupiter does. Jupiter is expansion of knowledge into understanding, and Jupiter is a representative of the pattern of belief systems that are, what that understanding is, and a pattern of meaning. And Jupiter represents that pattern of meaning. It's not anything beyond what the belief system entails as a whole. And Jupiter represents that. Jupiter expands on it. It's all about this big picture and larger than life with Jupiter. And so meeting the expansive, infinite space of Neptune in Pisces, which is the infinite, astral plane, right? Or unity consciousness, or the woo, I guess you could call it, or, the morphogenetic field that we are, the plasma, right? You can think of that as well, like Pisces in terms of energetic or astral or non-physical but very real properties. Plasma could also fit into this as well. But it's the idea here of returning back to the source from which you came in order to bring forward a new life potential, the seed, right, which is Aries. So And the lamb, right? The lamb, it's new, it's fresh, it is the beginner's mind, the seed, all of the potential. So the sun is here, Chiron is here, we had a new moon in Aries, so it's very much aligned with a idealistic image of what it means to be attuned with the cosmic order, right? And the inevitable polarizing of consciousness, right? This is something that has been talked about now since the new moon. So now here we are, and this is the test. This is the test of the polarizing of consciousness, because not only did we have this watch the water information drop very strongly and disseminated, right? Again, Jupiter in its expansion of this space is pushing it out to a wider area, right? And we're talking about watch the water, Pisces being the water, that we all share in with, right? That we all have access to as a consciousness, as a spiritual consciousness or a transcendent consciousness. And what happens, what is it that it is kind of motivating us to actually centralize and focus on? So you can see that there is it got so vast and wide. You kind of look up and you're like, whoa, there really is just like ocean surrounding this tiny little island that me and two other people are on. And you can even think about that two other people as, or even small group of people. You can think about it as Gilligan's Island if you want. You look up and you're like, whoa, it is just, as far as the eye can see, is just fog and, or you're just submerged, right? You're submerged in the space and you can't see clearly because light doesn't really, or if you've ever, trying to drive through fog, this is a great example, right? Shining your headlights does nothing, right? So you have to either stop or you have to get down really low if you're like walking and you need to get through fog, or you just wait it out. But it does imply here that we're in this close interaction in this situation where we are being tasked to really centralize our focus, align with our Dharma collectively. And what's interesting to me is what is the purpose, right? This question has a lot to do with how these experiences are either instigated or how they and why, and what it is that we do with them and what is the intention of them happening in the first place. So you see this whole watch the water thing come out with Jupiter and Neptune coming into a conjunction. So we're either being kind of corralled into a purpose without realizing it, because we are trying to find our way through this fog that it just keeps getting, it's like endless. But it also is a blessing, right? Jupiter, Jupiter is the representative. It's kind of like, and I know this is weird because I'm not advocating for these figures at all, but it is, Jupiter at the last degrees of Sagittarius, its own sign, is, the Pope, right? Blessing someone. And so the Jupiter meeting Neptune in Pisces, the actual essence of the relationship with God, relationship with divinity, Neptune that dissolves everything that it touches so that there is no difference between you and all else. It's that fully immersed experience. It's almost like there's a lot of different words for it, right? When you get to this point. And so there's a blessing that's here as well. And there's a Mintakan Starseed element here that I don't have time to go into today, but if you are a Mintakan Starseed and you're getting readings from me right now, it's something that I'm bringing up for you because this axis of 23 degrees, 22 to 23 degrees of Pisces Virgo is in direct square to the star Mintaka. And Mintakan Starseeds know all about losing their water world and being, living in the realm of Pisces in the oceans and having to bring that back into their own awareness, be able to somehow translate or to perfect themselves within that remembering without getting too pulled into the grief and trauma, because that's the thing. There was a world lost, and I'm finding that there are those connections there. Anyway, many people right now that I'm reading for, or whom I know their charts, have this 23 degrees Virgo Pisces somewhere in their chart right now. A lot of starseeds. So just know that that's also, if you know you have it here, any planet or a house cusp, you are being impacted in this particular way, I think. And it's about bringing forward the whole point of being here. And so there's also a blessing of this pathway, even though it is a test. It very much is a test. So what is our focus? What are we going to centralize our energy onto? How are we going to make the best of the situation that we're in? And, Jupiter showing up is like, hey, I represent everything that you believe in. And look at, but in the process is just making that spiritual transcendent realm like even more vast, and the fog is just rolling, right? So it seems endless. So that's the other thing about this too. It's interesting timing. So when we talk about watching the water and our internal water, it's definitely literal, physiological, and it's also very much connected to our own spirit and our own capacity to connect with this, unity consciousness or source or God through our own spirit. And so where does that come from? That is Cancer. That is the realm of Cancer and the moon, right? And so where's the moon today? The moon is in Virgo. So we're going to talk about these Virgo transits. There's going to be a big Syrian starseed activation as well. So the other thing I want to talk about theme-wise is where Chiron is and where it's, moving into today. So I want to share, and I'm sure many of you already have known, but it's good to review for all of us. I want to share the degree, the Sabian symbol for the degree that Chiron has been at. So it's been leading up to this 13 degrees of Aries. So just listen and see what is familiar. And these Sabian symbols, if you don't know what they are, they're literal symbols that a clairvoyant back in the very early 20th century would take a card, an index card with the degree and the sign, and they shuffled them all up. It was her and Mark Enbin Jones, who's a very well known, because he was the one that developed the Sabian symbols. She put it to her and had a clairvoyant vision of a symbol or a scene, and that's how they're made. It's a mandala, right? So, 13 degrees of Aries. An unexploded bomb reveals an unsuccessful social protest. So, an immature evaluation of the possibility of transforming suddenly the status quo. This is important to realize, because when we move, now that Chiron has moved into the next degree, it's going to seem even more relevant to the way certain narratives are being crafted and presented to us, and certain events happening, and how we're receiving the information about them, and possibly why. So this symbol pictures the result of a particular attempt to resolve a conflict, there's that polarization, between two feelings or concepts. Resolution by violence, right, which is the bomb, fails because the ego power at this stage is far too strong. There's a protective mechanism that immediately shuts down this immature kind of like, I'm going to force it. I'm going to force... I'm going to deal with this conflict by forcing this new concept or feeling into this place without, actually dealing with the polarization. The state thwarts attempts at popular revolution because these are premature expressions of a consciousness that's not free, but it can only just react wildly to constraint and to a central ruling power. Are you listening? This is where Chiron was at the new moon. This is the degree it is moving out of today. So yesterday it was still in this degree, right? It's a symbol of immature refusal to conform. And I'm not suggesting that we should conform in the name of an over idealistic desire for harmony. and peace, right? And so it seems counterintuitive, and that's the conflict, right? There's a conflict of wanting to get to a certain concept or starting to conceptualize something new, and really it's the energy that is generated from the conflict itself, from an old idea to a new idea, or an old situation to a new situation, that is actually causing a need, a want to just erupt, right? So as we move in today, and Chiron is in 14 degrees of Aries, this is very relevant. A serpent coiling near a man and a woman, okay? And this is, Chiron will be at this degree for a while. The moon in Virgo is going to have a sextile to Chiron at this degree, right? Another Syrian activation. And at the same time is going to be in a trine, we're going to see here, to Uranus in Taurus, okay? So the serpent represents the Kundalini, right? It represents the natural energy that is generated by polarization within the individual self. Okay, it's not really sex, although sexuality is a way to generate this power, okay? And that's not necessarily a secret, although I think they've tried to keep it a secret for a while, but there's also reasons to keep this, on the DL in some ways, because it's a very powerful type of magic, obviously. And this is primarily what is going on in a lot of cases, right under our noses. So, it's not just about that. It's more of the tantric element here. And you can relate this triangular image, right? And this is what it is. It's the triangle of the man, the woman, and the serpent in between them, representing the natural energy, representing the coiling of the Kundalini that's released through it's not conflict, but it is friction, okay? This is the test. Again, this is the test of our own consciousness. Do we get caught in the loop of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? Or do we actually transmute? Do we actually create? Do we actually take the conflict within ourselves and see that as the polarization as a means to transubstantiate something? And this is important too, because this is going to go back. I'm going to explain that we're going to go back to last weekend and the first quarter moon in Cancer, and that beautiful water trine with the kite, with the nodes of the moon, and where the south node in Scorpio, right? That is where the energy is produced and generated as a result of this. It starts here. Now, the idea here is that we're confronted with a test, but a lot of us don't understand the meaning. And so it is a test of polarized conscious participation in the process, right? Are we going to do it intentionally, consciously, with a sense of, this is created in order to generate this energy through conflict, right? This is what the controlled opposition concept has always been about. Why is that changed now, right? This could really dissolve a lot of issues of alienation and isolation if we see it that way. If we see the way that this conflict, whatever it is for us, and right now it's definitely within each of us and being activated and instigated through a number of scenes and events. So what we do with it is really up to us right now. And so with Chiron involved, what we're going to find is a much more of a propensity in some ways to fall back into the polarized consciousness of victim savior, right? Of wounded healer, of the polarization within us that keeps us from really stepping into a new version of ourselves, which is the whole point of why we're here, right? Coming into material form is our opportunity to create from our spiritual essence using the principles of the third dimension, which is polarization. We are here to do this, right? And other people are doing it in their own way, and they're also creating situations in which the energy is still being generated, but if we are not aware of what's happening, we don't transubstantiate, and somebody else is doing it for their own ends. And so the thing about Chiron is that it's going to keep pulling us back into those old stories, right? And you can see it swirling around right now. Now, the thing about the snake venom, whatever, what I think is very interesting and is worth paying attention to, besides the symbolic reference to the serpent and the fact that Venus just came off a Draco activation, and those are not the same thing, right? The dragon and the reptile are kind of different entities from different places, but there tends to be an overlap, right? Because they would both qualify as the same type of general, reptile, right? We just don't have dragons necessarily here anymore. But with the moon in Virgo, this is about, purifying and perfecting our own internal root structure, right? In Virgo, it is the strength of the root structure that is developed in Cancer, right? Cancer is the house of the root structure of the individual. And so when you think about it in terms of a plant, it's in Virgo that the root structure is drawing the waters up, that the root structure is drawing the minerals in. The root structure is what stabilizes, but also draws in what the individual needs in order to grow something that will be offered that holds the seed to the next cycle. Okay. And so the perfection of the form, the consistent focus on what is growing, right? Instead of the individual growing. It's gestation. It's holding, a new being or new potential that is growing. And this is part of the spiritual journey of Virgo and the real mastery of the hermit, right? Because this is about getting into the depth of who you are. And so when we think back to, remember when we had our first quarter moon and the moon was in Cancer, and then it had that beautiful water trine between the south node, Neptune and Jupiter, and then the moon in Cancer at the 23 to 24 degree mark, which again is about, a woman and two men living in very close connection to each other on a small island in the middle of the ocean. It's interesting that we see this imagery again, but it's about the individual consciousness being able to link and to find a way for the emotional, spiritual, and physical aspect of the self to find coherence and to be interdependent or understand our interdependence, right? And where does that come from? This South Node in Scorpio is representing transubstantiation, where we take our base drives and actually bring them, modulate them up to the next frequency. We take base animal drives and there's a metamorphosis into something that is way more potent and much more actually generate something of real value for the community. And not to say that procreation and the natural drive to reproduce doesn't do that for nature. That's exactly the whole point. But we're talking about the human potential here to be able to transubstantiate, to take those base urges and drives and pulling together in order to actually consciously, spiritually create something of real value to everyone involved. And that, I feel like that was a very important part of that water trine that we are being tasked with being able to do right now, to be able to see that the conflict and the feeling is expressed in the realm of Scorpio, and we have the opportunity to choose. At a soul level, we've already done this transubstantiation, and others are using this right now. But we have a choice of how to what end we want to transubstantiate this energy. So, which is very intense. And I feel like a lot of it is being created intentionally. So the thing about the snake venom that I think is interesting really is that if you actually read the research, if you actually look at the research that came out of University of Arizona, in and of itself, it's really just saying that it's what is happening with COVID in the tissues is mimicking the same process as being poisoned by a snake, right? And so it's kind of cascaded and spiraled into, there's putting snake venom, synthetic snake venom in the water, whatever. I don't know. What I do know though is that it appears to be on some level a disclosure of the experience of being poisoned through some sort of medium of water, right? And how that's happening, through what ends that's happening, like I think it's very interesting that we get this imagery of the serpent coiling as Chiron moves into the next degree of Aries, especially after an event in New York City that was most assuredly a false flag and probably was meant to be more than it was. But also at the same time, it seems pretty clear that it was never meant to explode, right? It was never meant to actually be fulfilled. That's part of the 13 degrees of Aries, is the pushing back in some ways. And so it's the pushing back. It's the fact that there isn't just a violent eruption right there that is part of the experience of like, okay, this is what it feels like truly as the serpent is coiling. So while we have this moon in Virgo, it's essential, I think, personally, especially because we're going to have some really strong Sirian starseed activation, which is related to Cancer, right? Sirius, the fixed star Sirius, is conjunct 14 degrees Cancer in Western astrology. And so Virgo, 12, 13, 14 Virgo, all of these, and Pisces. But Virgo, today, because of this moon transit, this is where these are starseed markings for Sirius. And so it's going to be in sextile to Sirius when the moon trines Uranus, is in a quincunx to Chiron. And so the guardianship that develops for the Sirian starseed and the capacity to utilize natural technology to make real changes in the materium is... Well, I would say that it is based on the ability to tap into the infinite space in which to create, which is, the moon in Cancer, the high priestess, right? There has to be a space in which to create, and that is where the root system is for the shaman, right? And there's a sense of guardianship, protection. There's a sense of community and family that also goes along with the Sirian starseeds, and it's the root system itself that is what is functioning in Virgo, mutable earth, right? There's actual moving of the materium of resources in order to support a process of growth and reconstitution. So this I feel like going back into that Sirian nature, and then specifically with the moon in Cancer over the weekend, kind of remember that we're still in this process of the first quarter moon crisis of action. Well, what do I do, right? Do I find myself able to be happy and fulfilled, and a sense of real festivity and social just social appeasement to your own self and your own feeling, versus this, I'm going to overcome every crisis through, just giving of myself and giving of myself and giving of myself. And that's still playing itself out. And I would say that there's something very important about what is going on in our deep sensitivity, our ability to feel into our own gut and our own truth, and I would say definitely into our own gut and to our own self-esteem, so that the still waters are running deep and that we know who we are, where we're connected. Because now that the moon is in Virgo, this is our chance to actually utilize the strength. And is it strong enough, right? Can you actually can you tap into this deep lineage? Virgo is very much about the cultural lineage, right? That you are a flowering of many generations before you, just like a plant is in that process of linking the past and the future while it is growing the fruit that bears the seed, right? So this is Virgo, and truly a master healer and wizard. Essentially the hermit is Virgo. So let's just take a moment here to look actually at the transits themselves. So there was earlier there was an opposition very early this morning to Venus, right? And here's the quickening, right? This is, and you can see it right here, the moon in Virgo opposite Venus, just coming off this Draco activation the last 2 days. So our embodiment, our sense of value and worth, harmony and beauty, and especially in Pisces, it's very imaginative, it's very dreamy, it's very watery, right? She is the Princess of Cups. She's kind of like an island to her own out there in the ocean, and really enjoying the ability to go into the ocean and back out very easily. There's a sense of real generosity here with Venus and Pisces, because what's mine is yours, and there's really no boundary here. And so it's just a lot of giving and feeling the love, right? Like in your own body as well. Now, it also depends on what ocean of consciousness that you are, are you tapped into false illusion, propaganda, right? The fear mongering, a sense of martyrdom, a sense of doom and gloom. All of these things are part of Pisces because it's the end of the cycle. But after this Draco activation with Venus opposite Draco, that also means that right now at this time the moon is just coming off its activation of Draco, passing over Draco. So the quickening is now happening for Venus in Pisces, right? She's starting to really pull in even more resources, not just for herself, but what she is just feeling into the something that is going to inspire everyone around her and the people that make up the community that she's part of. And so again, your family, your friends, anything that has value to you, right? Your business, projects that you're doing, the people involved in them. Venus is just our sensitivity to the material world. And our sensitivity is much more to the woo with her in Pisces. And so the opposition with the moon in Virgo is just like, don't forget who you are, right? And don't forget to, who are you, right? And tapping into your capacity to draw the waters of your own soul, right? Into your own sense of self, okay? Because it's very easy to just find yourself, just going with the flow, quite literally with Venus and Pisces. And this kind of keeps us grounded. It's so important right now that we're staying grounded. And then the other real big transit today is that, the moon comes into that Syrian position and then is in a trine to Uranus. It's in a trine to Uranus and has that quincunx to Chiron, which I spent just a lot of time talking about. So you can see the trine right here. Here's the quincunx to Chiron. And I just want to read the Sabian symbol for 14 degrees of Virgo, because we are also getting to the midpoint of a sign itself, and that's an important stage as well, where we're moving into somewhere new. So it's an aristocratic family tree, and it represents a very deep reliance upon our ancestral roots of, especially what our individual character. So you can see the blending of even these concepts within Virgo, where you are your own individual and you also are part of a line of ancestors, and that your character is a lot more dependent on that lineage than you may realize. And it's important to pay homage and to revere and honor where you've come from as well, and to acknowledge that you are not just, the sun in Aries. We think that we're, it's very easy to just be like, I am, it's all within my own potential and desire, and you really find your identity and expression and sustainment in all of this potential of the seed. But the moon in Virgo, the quincunx is more of just let's make an adjustment here. Let's make an adjustment in that there may be some measure of, I think that people, the whole snake thing, and the way that this is connected to this transition right now is really sticking to me. And maybe it's just a coincidence. I really, really doubt it. Especially because we know that astrology is one of the tools that are used by many groups that know how, they are very tapped into these cycles, and they are utilizing the energetic potentials, the electromagnetic and electrical and spiritual ramifications that come along with this. They use it too. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of, challenge both ways. And again, it's going to be bringing a lot of wounds to the surface, a lot of that wounded healer aspect, a lot of the polarization of identity is also going to be brought to the surface. And you can either see that polarization as potential in order to grow, and this full moon is going to be a big part of this, in our ability to do this, because it's one thing to align with an ideal image. It's another to be actually in attunement to the music of the universe, right? One is idealistic and image oriented, and the other is full experience of the vibration in your body, or in related to your body and your field. So this is just an adjustment with this moon quincunx Chiron, right? Just in terms of, it's not all just you, but it's also it's where we're coming from, and our ability to tap into that deep lineage of where we've been before and where we're going, that I think will allow us to see this coiling serpent between this conflicting experience as an opportunity, right? And that's what quincunxes really are for. And then you have the moon in a trine to Uranus, like an earth trine. So that in itself is pretty stabilizing in terms of the emergence is coming through, the natural emergence of our consciousness out of the material world, out of the environment is very much a natural cyclical process. And I know it seems so weird with Uranus, and it's going to be on the 18th when Mercury meets Uranus that is going to be like a wake-up call to that. And in the meantime, this trine that is a Syrian starseed activation with the moon in Virgo is like stabilizing. Remember where you've been. Tap into intuitively, and even in your subconscious, maybe in your dream state, depending on what's going on for you, your meditations, your prayers, tapping into where you've been. This Virgo archetype is so powerful. I mean, this is where the healers really are practicing and fine-tuning their own vessel in order to be a healer, or some sort of committed, the Vestal Virgins, right? The committed priestesses of the temple of Vesta or Hestia, right? And they took care of the eternal flame, right? That kept everything going. And so we want our bodies, ourselves, our life, our daily life, our actual life to be an exercise in service and an exercise in perfecting our own form. But it's not just us, right? And again, it's going to be a stabilizing emotional opportunity with this trine to Uranus, because Uranus does what Uranus does, which is shaking things up, which is radical flipping of the script in some ways to get you to wake up. And the Syrian connection is like, remember where we've been, right? And how there was a time when the Syrians for whatever reason, control or just being very misguided, gave us, I think, brought technology or the concept of this technology to humanity before we were ready to do it. So that's the other thing too, is that might come into our awareness as well, because we need like a kick in the ass, right? In terms of Uranus to be aware of the natural emergence of consciousness. It is life will evolve. We don't have to force it to happen, but if we don't have patience, or we are being manipulated, or we just don't know any better, that is, sometimes we do need a swift kick to wake us up, right? Near-death experiences for people, just radical changes that happen, unexpected, and to not forget where we, to tap into these deep ancestral roots and know that these roots are part of, they're part of where we've come from. We've developed them, but again, that's the Cancer archetype. So I'm going to leave it there. That's plenty of information for today, my friends. I just felt very strongly about having to communicate a lot of what's been going on. And this is an ongoing conversation, and I hope it continues to be an ongoing conversation in the Telegram groups, and just in your own lives and in your personal conversations. I think it's important that we just keep talking about it, realizing that polarization of our own consciousness during this time is the opportunity to actually create something new within ourselves, which will then attract, or then will resonate with the pattern of meaning. And Jupiter is just the representative of that pattern. Jupiter isn't making anything happen other than representing the pattern that we create in our own relationships with each other and society. So it's important that we are aware and intentional about it. And every time we get pulled back into like some, big display or whatever, that just gets... we just get pulled, our energy gets pulled back into it. And I know that there's maybe there is a valuable reason for that to happen. Maybe we're just all creating it ourselves in order to have the experience of it. That's also a possibility too, because we are very powerful. And at the very root of all of this, we are our highest selves really creating this entire experience. It's all just us, right? In order to learn and evolve at a soul level. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading, energy work to support your process, if you are interested in the Starseed Fellowship and what that's all about, everything you need is in the description box below. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I love you. I will see you tomorrow for the daily. Have a great day. Bye.